8. Tide spell, worth having. The northern border of the eastern continent is the country of human beings and the birthplace of human civilization. There are 6 of the 7 human kingdoms in the northern border. Except for the outlier, the Storm Kingdom, which was established by the land cultivators in the southern border of the mainland, most of the human beings live on the land of the northern border. However, Cosmodan, which is controlled by dwarves in the northern border and the middle of the continent, is not actually connected to the wetland area. Between the two, there is a large strait several kilometers wide, which separates the northern border from the main body of the mainland. Hundreds of years ago, it was impassable to travel here, and the only way to travel is by boat. However, before the Battle of the Three Hammers, when the powerful kingdom of dwarves and the kingdom of humans made good friends, in order to facilitate their journey, a bridge was built between the northern border and the wetlands. This is the Saldar Bridge, a civil marvel of Azeroth. Its construction process is very fantastic. In addition to relying on the natural stone carving skills of the dwarves, there are also the help of human mages and wild-hammer dwarven shamans. Therefore, to be precise, this bridge, which is several kilometers long and can accommodate 100 people at the same time, is actually a miracle of magic power. It makes the world change. Let humans and dwarves go back and forth, without having to be disturbed by the waves and the thorns of the sea. This strait is also called the Sea of Reefs, and there is a Naga clan living in it. They have existed here for longer than the civilization of humans or dwarves. But no one cared about these savage soft-skinned snakes, and no one regarded them as the masters of this strait. After the Saldar Bridge was built, these Nagas were completely excluded from the civilized world. They became one of the barbaric legends of the wetlands. But the empire of the deep-sea Naga can pull both humans and orcs together and easily. The Naga, regarded as a barbarian, was the most civilized race in this world 10,000 years ago. Compared with their history, the matter between humans and orcs really can't be set on the table. Blake will walk on the bottom of the reef sea, while patrolling vigilantly from left to right, still thinking about the story of Naga in his heart. He has 3 uses. Relying on the body of the undead, he moved quickly through the seabed. He also pretended to put a lot of unpleasant seaweed on his body to disguise himself. Once a Naga approaches, he will immediately go into stealth to avoid it. However, the perception of the human race in the deep sea can't be compared with amphibians like Naga. Therefore, there is a little vanguard leading the way in front of Black. The little Murloc with blue stripes on his body, just like a real fish, swayed his limbs and swam freely in the deep sea. Probably because it was fed very well by Black during this time, its body size is larger than the normal cub, and the fins on the back have grown out. It's orange, so pretty. However, Murloc fins are not quite the same as real fish. There are 3 or 4 bulges on their backs, and they look like they are carrying battle flags. The Murloc's perception in the water is very keen. Once Burnbow finds traces of Naga, he will immediately wave his claws to warn, and then Black will sneak with it. In this way, the 2 guys have evaded for Naga inspections. It's still a little distance from the elf ruins guarded by the thorn spine Naga in the depths of the reef sea. There are some Naga recruits cruising around. As long as I don't disturb them, I can pass safely. Black estimated his speed and the width of the strait in his mind, and after a few minutes of mental arithmetic, he came to a conclusion. I've been walking for an hour, and I'll be able to walk through the area controlled by the Naga and reach the shallow sea below the highlands of Stromgard in another hour. From there, follow the coastline all the way to the east, past the dwarven-controlled castle of Dangarok, and enter the Hillsbrad foothills. After another 3 days, you can almost reach the town of Southsea. The Orcs just crossed the Cosmodan Sea 5 days ago. They should be besieging the city of Terran Mill. The town of Southsea should have been occupied by the Orcs. I should stay with the dwarves for a few days and watch the situation. Blake frowned underwater and said to himself, "It's all to blame for that nosy bronze dragon. If it hadn't suddenly appeared, I would have already arrived at Arthey Highlands, which is a secondary battlefield. The Highland Knights of the Kingdom of Stromgard have the initiative and terrain advantages. King Thora's Trollbane is a staunch main battle faction, and there are genius commanders like Donna's Trollbane sitting in town. The battle situation there is definitely not as critical as Hillsbrat Hills. Quack quack. Burberry suddenly shouted in front of him, waving his claws, interrupting Blake's thinking. The skeleton man stepped forward, hugged the little Murloc in his arms, and jumped into the shadows. But when he raised his head, he found that it wasn't just Naga who warned the little fish. On the sea in the distance, there are several black and tattered ships, besieged by a large group of Thorn Ridge Nagas. Those soft-skinned snakes swayed their bright snake tails from the deep sea, carrying heavy weapons such as war halberds, tridents, etc., and rushed to the sea frantically. These leading characters are all male Naga. Their lower body is a real snake tail, but the upper body still maintains a human shape, covered with bright scales, and their faces look quite close to beasts. In fact, male Nagas have more dragon-like faces and have tentacles on either side of their cheeks. They have fins on their backs that are very similar to Murloc's, and their upper body muscles covered with scales are stretched. Completely straightened, it is estimated that it can be 2 meters 5 or even 3 meters. But these males are downright cannon fodder in Naga society, because Naga is a matriarchal society. Just like now, it is a group of female Naga who are directing this raid. Their size and maleness are just two extremes. These female snakes are tall and slender, with fine scales and antennae on their faces. They generally have 4 hands, with at least 4 weapons. These females retain more memory and humanity in the mutations that followed the cataclysm 10,000 years ago, and as such, they possess greater intelligence and mana than their male counterparts. That is, more vicious and cunning. Also use magic. Crash. 7 or 8 female Naga cursed and jointly launched a large-scale magic. Dazzling lightning churned on the sea, like a dazzling thunderbolt, swept across the 3 orc troop carriers. That's right, these Naga are fighting the orcs. No one knows why these raging orcs appeared in this place. Perhaps they were planning to take a back path and attack Stromgard in the Kingdom of Stromgard. But unfortunately, this group of outsiders is not very clear about the horror hidden under the reefs. Black quietly carried a water plant, floated to the surface, and looked at the battlefield in the distance. The lightning magic thrown by the female Naga swept away the soldiers on the 3 orc troop ships. But more orcs roared and rushed out of the cabin with tomahawks and hammers, and they were not afraid of the male Naga who rushed into the ship. They melee these soft-skinned snakes, just like cutting down humans, easily harvesting the lives of these male Nagas. Unfortunately, there are no warlocks on board. The orcs have long abandoned the ancient and pure shamanic beliefs. They lack spellcasters. I can only watch those cunning and vicious female Naga slowly bury their troop carriers from a long distance, using lightning and water element magic. The defeat of the orcs is doomed. They made the wrong choice in the Naga's home field and fought against these Thornspine Naga. Their courage in desperate situations is commendable, but courage can't save their lives. Blake sneered. Probably from the memory of Prince Drake, he has no affection for orcs at all, although he is a double agent in the game, and the alliance and horde play. But what he felt more belonged to was the new tribe established more than a decade later, not the old tribe invaders with bloody hands. He hated the orcs, and he hated the Naga. Although he was eager to rush to the center of the battlefield and harvest wildly, considering the increasing number of these Nagas, he rationally extinguished this plan. But just as he turned around and was about to assassinate a few orcs or Naga in order to get some oil and water, he suddenly heard a loud explosion and the horrified roar of the Nagas. Black turned his head and saw an orc troop transport explode. The fire lit up. The orcs and Naga on the ship were involved, and the flesh and blood flew. It seems that the bloody orcs saw that they were invincible, so they detonated the explosives used on the ship to attack the rear of the humans, and they perished with the Naga. But that's not the point. That guy. Black saw a male Naga that was larger than the other Naga, pushed by the firelight and smashed onto the sea, just in the water in front of Black's eyes. Its scales are different from other Naga. It is pure cyan. It looked like a beautiful jewel, with a magic pendant hanging from its thick neck. When Blake looked back, he could see clearly that the spell just now had a tidal light shining, which forced the Naga to get a little time to escape before it was seriously injured. Instead of being directly blown up by the explosion of that ship, with such a powerful magic item, this guy has an unusual status. Perhaps the leader of this group of Thornspine Naga. Seeking wealth and danger, do it. Blake didn't hesitate for too long, pulled out Werther's leg and dagger with a swoosh, and in a stealth state, rushed towards the big Naga, who was only a dozen meters in front of him. The guy's back was opened by the explosion of the orc, and dark green blood was scattered everywhere. It was badly injured. It growled in the water. Stupid awful, how dare to hurt the noble body of a prince of the tide. Unforgivable. In the name of Queen Atara, send these savage orcs to the deep-sea hell. Kill them all. The Naga use the Sarasian language, which is a complex language only used by elves. It is at least 10 times more complicated than the human language. After all, it is an ancient language that has lasted for 10,000 years. Blake understood. Although he had never learned it before, after coming to this world, he not only learned the Thalassian language without a teacher, but also learned the Orc language, the common language of mankind, and even the Dwarven language. It's a pity that he still can't understand the Murloc language, which is really a sad thing. In short, the noble big Naga shouted in the water and lost his temper, like incompetent fury. Before it was injured, it might be powerful. But now all the anger is attracted by the orcs, naturally ignoring the threat behind it. Blake appeared from the water, and in the seawater stained with the blood of the big Naga, he waved Werther's legs, and with all his strength, struck the big Naga's blinded eyes with a stick. The poisoned dagger in the other hand pierced into its bloody eyes with ruthlessness and precision. Plug it all the way in. Show no mercy. The big Naga who was attacked was not dead yet, and it tried to fight back with a roar. Blake was quick-witted, grabbed a large bottle of blood ring poison from his backpack, and stuffed it directly into the big mouth of Naga. He hugged Naga's sturdy neck from behind to prevent it from spitting out the poison. With the other hand, he waved the perfectly balanced Werther's leg and smashed it frantically at Naga's head. He could feel that this guy's struggle became weak after 2 seconds, and after 5 seconds it was completely silent, like a snake with its tendons pulled out. A huge heat flow poured into Black's body in an instant, and the thief class jumped directly from level 11 to level 13 at this moment. Is this the joy of grabbing heads? Is this the joy of fighting boss? Love, love, love. Seeing the turbid water, a Naga rushed over, and Blake grabbed the exquisite spell hanging on the neck of the big Naga, and pulled out the short sword inserted in the big Naga's head. He jumped into the shadows while holding the little Murloc. At the moment of entering stealth, Blake glanced at the equipment column of the character card, and there was an entry. Tide charm, broken. Excellent quality. Special effects tidal shock, cooling. The skeleton man in the deep water suddenly widened his eyes. Isn't this the civilian artifact?